The tactical display showed nothing but red. Reed pressed his hands against the console, watching friendly signals disappear one after another. His people were dying out there. The Confederation fleet had held this position for 6 days, but the Dominion kept sending more ships, always more ships. "Sir, we've lost the carrier group on the left flank," someone called out. Reed didn't turn to see who. It didn't matter anymore. They were all going to die here at the edge of known space, fighting an enemy that seemed endless. The Dominion had started this war 3 years ago. Nobody really knew why. They just came, world after world, taking everything. When planets resisted, the Dominion burned them. When species fought back, the Dominion eliminated them. Total war, complete destruction. The Confederation had tried diplomacy, tried negotiation, tried everything except giving up. Now they were trying survival and failing at that too. Reed watched another ship explode on his screen. The Valiant, good ship, 300 people aboard, now just debris and radiation. He typed their designation into his report log, hands moving automatically. Someone had to record this. Someone had to tell the story of how they stood and fought, even when hope died. "Contact," the sensor officer shouted. Her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Unknown vessel approaching from deep space. Distance, 2 million kilometers and closing fast." Reed looked up. Another Dominion ship probably, come to finish them off. Classification. "I don't know, sir. It's big, really big. Bigger than anything I've ever seen on sensors. It's not broadcasting any identification codes. It's not in our database. It's just coming straight at us." The command center went quiet. Everyone stared at their screens. Reed pulled up the sensor feed on his own display and felt his breath catch in his throat. The energy signature was impossible. No ship could generate that much power. No known ship, anyway. "How big?" Reed asked quietly. The sensor officer checked her readings twice before answering. 4 kilometers long, sir. Maybe longer. The readings keep changing. It's like the ship is bending space around itself. I've never seen anything like this." 4 kilometers. The largest Confederation battleship was barely 800 meters. The biggest Dominion dreadnought they'd encountered was maybe a kilometer. This thing was a flying mountain. "Try to hail it," Reed ordered. "All frequencies, ask for identification." Static came back. Then slowly, a voice emerged through the interference. "Human." The accent was strange, flatter than most humans Reed had met, but definitely human. "This is Captain Davies of the United Human Space Force vessel Reckoning. We are entering the combat zone. All Confederation ships, pull back to minimum safe distance. All Dominion ships, power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You have 2 minutes to comply." Reed stared at his console. United Human Space Force. Humans had been part of the Confederation for almost 50 years. They contributed ships, soldiers, resources, but they'd never mentioned anything like this. Never showed any technology this advanced. Never claimed to have a separate military force. "Sir, the Dominion fleet is ignoring the warning," the tactical officer reported. "They're reforming their attack formation. Looks like they're preparing to engage the new vessel." Of course they were. The Dominion didn't negotiate, didn't retreat, didn't surrender. They fought until they won or until everything was dead. The unknown ship, this Reckoning, emerged from subspace right in the middle of the battlefield. Reed had to adjust his display scale 3 times to fit the whole vessel on screen. It was absolutely massive, shaped like a spearhead with angular armor plating that seemed to absorb sensor beams. No windows, no visible weapon ports, just smooth dark metal that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of midnight. "2 minutes are up," Captain Davies said over the open channel. His voice was calm, almost sad. "I'm sorry it has to be this way." The Reckoning lit up, not with lights or engine glow, but with energy. Pure, visible energy that made every sensor in the Confederation fleet scream warnings. Reed watched his display flash alarm after alarm. Radiation levels spiking. Gravity fluctuations. spatial distortions, energy readings that exceeded his equipment's ability to measure. All ships emergency retreat, Reed transmitted to what remained of the Confederation fleet. Get away from that thing, now. They didn't need to be told twice. Every Confederation vessel that could still move began burning engines at maximum power, fleeing the battle zone. Reed kept his eyes on the display, unable to look away. The Dominion fleet, 300-strong ships, advanced on the Reckoning. They opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, particle beams. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The weapons hit the human ship and simply stopped. Not deflected. Not absorbed. They just ceased to exist, like reality itself was refusing to let them touch the Reckoning. Then the human ship fired back. Reed didn't have words for what he saw. The Reckoning's weapons didn't look like weapons. They looked like tears in space itself. Bright lines of nothing that crossed the distance to the Dominion ships in an instant. Where the beams touched, Dominion vessels didn't explode. They came apart at a molecular level, breaking down into their basic components and scattering into the void. 3 capital ships gone in the first volley, then 6 more, then a dozen. The Dominion fleet tried to scatter, tried to retreat, but the Reckoning was faster, impossibly faster. It moved through space like it wasn't bound by normal physics, appearing here and there, each appearance marking the death of more Dominion ships. In 5 minutes, the battle was over. 300 Dominion warships reduced to wreckage and atoms. The Confederation fleet, what little remained of it, floated in shocked silence at the edge of the combat zone. Reed realized he was shaking. His hands trembled over his console. He'd spent 3 years fighting the Dominion, losing slowly, watching his people die. He'd thought nothing could stop them. He'd thought the war would only end when the Confederation was completely destroyed. He'd been wrong. The Reckoning hung in space, dark and terrible and absolutely still. Captain Davies' voice came over the channel one more time. Confederation vessels, this is Davies. The defense of this sector is complete. We're moving forward to engage the main Dominion force. Stay behind us. This war is about to end. Reed looked at his tactical display, at the empty space where hundreds of enemy ships had been just minutes ago. He thought about the years of fighting, the countless dead, the hopelessness that had become normal. Then he thought about that human ship, disappearing into the darkness, hunting the enemy that had seemed unstoppable. Maybe the war really was about to end. Maybe humanity had been holding something back all this time, waiting for the right moment. Maybe they'd just been saving their strength. Or maybe, Reed thought as he watched the Reckoning vanish from his sensors, humanity had been preparing for war on a scale nobody else could imagine. Admiral Corvus had commanded the Dominion's Western Fleet for 12 years. He'd conquered 40 star systems, subjugated 20 species, never lost a major engagement. Victory was his natural state, as constant as breathing. Until today. His tactical display made no sense. The projection showed his 300 warships simply ceasing to exist. No distress calls, no emergency transmissions. They were there, and then they were gone, replaced by debris fields and radiation signatures that his sensors couldn't properly classify. "Report," he demanded. His primary tactical officer, a young male named Stratton, worked his console frantically. "Sir, the forward battle group has been eliminated. Completely eliminated. Time from first contact to total destruction was 4 minutes and 37 seconds. We lost 311 ships." Corvus felt something unfamiliar crawl up his spine. It took him a moment to recognize the sensation. Fear. He crushed it immediately. The Dominion did not fear. The Dominion conquered. What destroyed them? Was it a weapon? A new Confederation superweapon? Stratton's hands shook as he pulled up the data. It was a single ship, sir. One vessel. Human origin according to the identification broadcast. Designation UHSF Reckoning. It used weapons we have no classification for, energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. The data doesn't make sense. Show me. The main view screen filled with recorded footage from the last moments of the forward fleet. Corvus watched in silence as a ship, the size of a small moon, appeared and systematically destroyed everything in range. The human vessel moved wrong. Physics should have prevented something that large from maneuvering like a fighter craft, but it did anyway. It shifted position faster than tracking systems could follow, appearing in multiple locations almost simultaneously. The weapons were worse. Beams of something that looked like concentrated nothing, erasing ships from existence. Projectiles that seemed to ignore armor and shields completely, passing through hulls as if they weren't there before detonating inside target vessels. Reality itself appeared to bend around the human ship, space warping and twisting in ways Corvus had only seen near black holes. How many humans serve in their military? Corvus asked quietly. According to our intelligence, approximately 2 million across all branches, Stratton answered. They contribute support vessels to the Confederation fleet. Medical ships, supply transports, some light cruisers. Nothing particularly advanced. Nothing like this. Our intelligence is clearly inadequate. Corvus studied the footage again. If they have one ship like this, they have more. You don't build something this advanced as a single prototype. This is production-level technology, proven technology. What are your orders, sir? Corvus considered his options. Retreat was unthinkable. The Dominion High Command would execute him for cowardice. But advancing against an enemy with this level of technological superiority was suicide. He needed more information. He needed to understand what he was facing. Dispatch long-range reconnaissance drones. Track the human vessel. I want to know where it's going and what it's doing. Pull our forward fleets back to the staging world at Helix Tertius. We fortify there and request reinforcements from the core systems. Sir, pulling back will leave 7 conquered systems exposed. The Confederation might retake them. Let them. Corvus turned away from the display. We can always reconquer territory. We can't reconquer anything if our entire fleet is destroyed. Send the orders, now. The commands went out across the Dominion network. Fleets began withdrawing from advanced positions, consolidating their strength. Corvus watched his tactical map reorganize itself, thousands of ships moving in coordinated retreat. It was the right decision, the smart decision, but it felt like poison in his veins. The Dominion did not retreat. 3 hours later, the reconnaissance reports started coming in. Corvus read them with growing disbelief. The human ship was hunting, not defending, not patrolling, hunting. It was moving through Dominion-controlled space like a predator, finding isolated fleet groups and destroying them. 4 more battle groups had been eliminated, then 6, then 9. The reckoning left nothing behind but wreckage and warning beacons broadcasting the same message in every known language. Surrender immediately or face annihilation. You have been warned. Corvus pulled up the casualty reports. In less than a day, humanity had destroyed more Dominion ships than the Confederation had managed in 3 years of war. The numbers were staggering, unbelievable, and still the human ship kept moving, kept hunting, kept killing. Sir, we're receiving a priority transmission from High Command, his communications officer announced. They want a full tactical briefing on the human vessel. Corvus prepared his report carefully. He included all the data, all the footage, all the analysis his people could manage. He concluded with a single recommendation: immediate peace negotiations with the Confederation and humanity. The response came back within the hour. 3 words that made his blood run cold. Destroy the human ship. Corvus read the message twice, then 3 times. High Command was insane. They were ordering him to engage an enemy that had single-handedly crippled the Western Fleet, an enemy with technology that exceeded Dominion capabilities by orders of magnitude, an enemy that seemed completely unstoppable. But orders were orders. Disobedience meant death, not just for him but for his entire family line. The Dominion punished failure and cowardice with extinction. "Prepare the fleet for combat operations," Corvus ordered. His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "Plot an intercept course for the human vessel. We engage at maximum range with concentrated fire. Every ship, every weapon, simultaneous strike." "Sir, that's more than 2,000 warships. Are you certain?" "No," Corvus admitted quietly, "but we have our orders." He watched his fleet begin to move, forming up into attack formations. 2,000 ships against one. In any normal situation, it would be overwhelming force, more than enough to destroy any vessel ever built. But this wasn't a normal situation, and Corvus suspected, deep in his gut where instinct lived, that 2,000 ships wouldn't be nearly enough. The human vessel had appeared on long-range sensors now. It was heading directly toward them, not trying to evade, not attempting evasive maneuvers, just coming straight at the Dominion fleet like they were nothing more than an inconvenience. Corvus thought about his career, his victories, his life of conquest. He thought about his mate and offspring back on the homeworld. He thought about the Dominion's centuries of expansion and domination. Then he thought about that human ship, moving through space like death incarnate, leaving only silence and wreckage in its wake. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Corvus considered the possibility that the Dominion might actually lose this war. Petra had lived under Dominion occupation for 11 months. She'd learned to recognize the sounds of their ships overhead, the heavy thrum of their patrol craft, the sharp whine of their fighters. She knew these sounds the way prey knew the footsteps of predators. Today the sounds were different. She stood in the ruins of what used to be a marketplace, looking up at a sky that burned. Ships fought in orbit above her world, Helix Tertius, and the atmosphere itself seemed to catch fire from the energy being released. Streaks of light cut across the clouds. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers. "Get inside," her neighbor Wren hissed, pulling at her arm. "The Dominion will shoot anyone they see outside during combat operations." Petra let herself be pulled toward the shelter of a collapsed building. A dozen other survivors huddled there, watching the sky through gaps in the rubble. They'd all learned to be invisible over the past year. The Dominion didn't tolerate resistance, didn't allow gatherings, didn't permit anything that looked like organization or hope. "What's happening up there?" someone asked. "Another Confederation attack probably," Wren said. "Bound to fail like all the others. Then the Dominion will punish us for it." That was how occupation worked. When the Confederation attacked, the Dominion took it out on civilian populations, burned cities, executed prisoners, made examples. Petra had lost her brother that way, shot in the street for being in the wrong place when the Dominion needed to demonstrate power. But something about this felt different. The rhythm of the fighting was wrong. Usually, Dominion ships moved in coordinated patterns, overwhelming any attackers through sheer numbers. This time they seemed scattered, frantic. Ships kept entering the atmosphere, burning hot on re-entry, running from something in orbit. "Look at that," someone whispered, pointing upward. Petra followed their gaze and saw it. A ship. A massive ship, larger than anything she'd ever seen. It hung in the sky like a second moon, dark and angular and absolutely terrifying. As she watched, beams of impossible light reached down from the vessel, touching Dominion military installations on the surface. Where the beams struck, buildings simply stopped existing, not exploded, not destroyed, just gone, erased from reality as if they'd never been built. The Dominion garrison fort disappeared, then the communication array on the northern ridge, then the vehicle depot. "What is that thing?" Wren breathed. A transmission burst across every frequency, overriding the Dominion's communication lockdown. Petra's old data pad, one she'd hidden from confiscation, crackled to life. A voice spoke in clear, simple language. This is Captain Davies of the human vessel Reckoning. All Dominion military personnel on Helix Tertius have 60 seconds to evacuate their positions. All civilian populations should take shelter immediately. We are engaging military targets only. Repeat, 60 seconds to evacuate. Human, Petra felt something stir in her chest that she'd thought was dead. Humans were part of the Confederation, but they'd never fielded ships like this. Never demonstrated technology this advanced. The Confederation had been losing this war slowly, inevitably. Apparently, nobody had told the humans. The countdown began. Petra watched through the cracks in her shelter as Dominion soldiers fled their posts. Some ran for transport ships. Others just ran, dropping weapons, abandoning equipment. Fear made them fast. 60 seconds passed. The sky lit up. The human ship fired again and again, methodical and precise. Every Dominion military installation on the planet was hit. Barracks, command centers, weapons depots, supply warehouses. The targeting was absolutely perfect. Buildings on either side of military structures remained untouched while Dominion facilities were reduced to nothing. Petra had expected explosions, fire, the usual chaos of war. Instead, the Dominion positions simply ceased to be. One moment there, next moment empty ground. Clean, surgical, terrifying in its precision. "They're destroying the occupation force," someone said in wonder. "They're actually winning." Within 10 minutes, every major Dominion military presence on Helix Tertius was gone. The human ship remained in orbit, silent and watchful. Petra waited for the next phase. The invasion. The new occupation. Just different masters wearing different uniforms. But nothing happened. The human ship just stayed there holding position. Another transmission came through. The same voice, calm and measured. "Dominion forces have been eliminated from Helix Tertius. This world is now under temporary human protection until proper Confederation authority can be established. Medical supplies and emergency rations will be delivered to population centers within the hour. All civilians are advised to remain calm. You are free now." Free? Petra hadn't heard that word applied to her world in almost a year. She didn't believe it, couldn't believe it. Ren crawled to the edge of their shelter and looked out at the street. Dominion soldiers who'd been guarding checkpoints were gone. Fled or dead or evacuated, it didn't matter. The checkpoints stood empty. The guard towers were unmanned. "I'm going out there," Ren said. "Don't be stupid, it could be a trap." "It's been a trap for 11 months. I'm done hiding." Petra watched her neighbor step out into the open street. Others followed. Slowly, carefully, people emerged from shelters and ruined buildings. They stood in the marketplace, looking up at that massive human ship overhead, waiting for the punishment that always came. Instead, smaller craft detached from the Reckoning. They descended smoothly, landing in open areas throughout the city. Not military transports, not gunships, supply vessels, medical shuttles. Humans emerged from the craft. They wore uniforms but carried no weapons. They set up distribution points and medical stations with efficient speed. One of them, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes, approached Petra's group. "We're here to help," she said simply. "Food, water, medical care, whatever you need. Can you help us identify those who need emergency treatment?" Petra stared at her. "You're not staying, not occupying." The woman looked surprised. "Occupy? No, we're just here to help stabilize things until your own government can return. This is your world, not ours." "Then why did you come? Why fight for us?" The woman glanced up at the massive warship overhead. "Because that's what humans do. We end wars. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We made a promise a long time ago after our own people nearly destroyed each other. Never again. Not to us and not to anyone else if we can prevent it." Petra felt tears on her face. She couldn't remember the last time she'd cried. Couldn't remember the last time anything felt like it might actually get better. "The Dominion won't stop," she said. "They'll send more ships. They'll take this world back." The woman smiled grimly. "They're welcome to try. Captain Davies has a message for them, written in fire across a dozen star systems. The occupation ends now. All of it." Above them, the reckoning turned its massive bulk toward the stars, toward the Dominion core systems, toward the heart of the enemy empire. Petra watched it go and felt something unfamiliar bloom in her chest. Hoping. Hale had worked in the shipyards for 18 years. She'd helped build the vessels that carried the Dominion to victory across the galaxy. Thousands of warships had been constructed in these orbital facilities, each one a testament to Dominion industrial might. Now alarms screamed through every corridor, and people ran for the evacuation ships. "Move, move, move," her supervisor shouted, herding workers toward the docking bays. "All non-essential personnel to the transports. This is not a drill." Hale grabbed her tool bag out of habit, then dropped it. Tools wouldn't matter if the shipyards got destroyed. She joined the flow of people rushing through the metal corridors. Behind her, the construction bay doors sealed automatically. Hundreds of partially built warships sat in various stages of completion, abandoned by their crews. "What's happening?" she asked the worker beside her. A young male named Trent, fresh from training. He looked terrified. "Human attack. They say it's just one ship. Just one ship is attacking all 3 moons." That was impossible. The Dominion had built these shipyard moons specifically to be impregnable. Each moon had defense platforms, shield generators, weapon batteries. They'd been designed to withstand siege from entire fleets. One ship couldn't possibly threaten them. Hale made it to the transport bay and strapped into a seat. The ship was already packed with workers. As soon as the last person boarded, the pilot launched without waiting for clearance. The transport shot out of the bay and into open space. Through the viewport, Hale saw the shipyard moon in its entirety. Construction facilities covered the surface, massive structures housing the forges and assembly platforms that churned out Dominion warships. Defense satellites orbited in thick layers. Shield barriers shimmered with active power. And beyond it all, hanging in space like judgment itself, was the human vessel. Hale had seen ships her entire life, built them, maintained them, understood them. This thing was beyond her comprehension. It was geometry made hostile, angles and planes that somehow conveyed menace just by existing. The reckoning, they'd called it. The name fit. "It's just sitting there," someone whispered. "Why isn't it attacking?" As if in answer, a transmission broadcast across all frequencies. The same voice Hale had heard on the evacuation announcement. Human, male, calm as still water. "All personnel evacuating the shipyard moons have 30 minutes to clear the engagement zone. At the end of 30 minutes, the facilities will be destroyed. This is your only warning." 30 minutes. Hale checked her chronometer. The transport pilot was pushing engines to maximum, trying to put as much distance as possible between them and the moons. Around them, thousands of other ships fled in all directions. Workers, engineers, maintenance crews, even some military personnel abandoning their posts in the face of this threat. The Dominion fleet tried to respond. Warships moved to intercept the human vessel. Hale counted at least 200 capital ships converging on the Reckoning's position. They opened fire from maximum range, launching missiles and energy weapons in coordinated volleys. Nothing reached the target. The human ship existed in its own pocket of changed reality. Weapons approached it and simply stopped, frozen in space, before detonating harmlessly against some invisible barrier. The Reckoning didn't even move to evade. It just sat there, weathering an assault that should have destroyed any vessel ever built. Then it fired back. Hale watched in horror as the Dominion fleet began to die. The human weapons didn't behave like normal weapons. They seemed to reach through space, appearing directly on target without crossing the distance between. Ships exploded from the inside out. Others broke apart along fault lines that shouldn't have existed. Some simply compressed into points of infinite density before vanishing completely. In 5 minutes, 200 warships became debris. The human vessel hadn't moved, hadn't maneuvered, hadn't even oriented itself toward its targets. It just killed, methodical and absolute. The 30-minute countdown continued. Evacuation ships kept launching from all 3 moons. Hale's transport passed near the second shipyard facility, close enough to see people still crowding onto vessels, desperate to escape. Not everyone would make it. The facilities employed millions. There weren't enough ships. "Why are they doing this?" Trent asked, his voice cracked. "We're just workers, just builders." "The shipyards build warships," Hale said quietly. "Warships that kill Confederation people, kill humans. We might be workers, but we're working for the war machine. We don't have a choice. It's work or starve. That's how the Dominion operates." Hale nodded. She knew, everyone knew. The Dominion didn't allow dissent, didn't permit conscientious objection. You worked or you died. Simple as that. But the humans didn't know individual circumstances. Couldn't know. They just saw the shipyards cranking out the vessels that prolonged the war. The countdown reached 0. Through the viewport, Hale watched the first moon die. The Reckoning's weapons activated, beams of structured light that didn't just destroy but unmade. The shipyard facilities dissolved, not exploded, not melted, just ceased to be, breaking down into their component atoms and dispersing into space. Construction bays that had taken decades to build were erased in seconds. The second moon followed, then the third. Hale watched decades of work, centuries of accumulated infrastructure, vanish like it had never existed. The Dominion's primary shipbuilding capacity for this entire sector gone in minutes. And still the human ship sat there, unmoving, untouched. Around it floated the remains of the Dominion ships that had tried to stop it. Inside it, Hale imagined, humans operated their controls with the same calm efficiency they'd shown throughout this attack. She thought about the ships she'd helped build, thought about where they'd gone, what they'd done, how many Confederation worlds had burned under guns she'd helped install, how many people had died in ships she'd helped construct. "What happens now?" someone asked. Hale looked at the empty space where the moons had been, looked at the human vessel already turning toward its next target. The Dominion had picked this fight, had started this war, had created the conditions that brought humanity into the conflict. Now, Hale said, we face the consequences. The transport continued its flight toward the inner systems. Behind them, evacuation ships scattered in all directions, carrying millions of displaced workers. The Dominion military scrambled to respond, to coordinate, to find some way to stop this unstoppable force. Hale knew they wouldn't find one, knew the war had fundamentally changed. The Dominion had always won through overwhelming numbers, through industrial superiority, through the ability to replace losses faster than enemies could inflict them. But what did numbers matter against an enemy that could erase 3 moons in minutes? What did industrial capacity mean when your shipyards became atoms? How did you replace losses when your replacement capacity no longer existed? The Reckoning disappeared from sensors, jumping to its next target. Somewhere in the Dominion's industrial network, more facilities would soon cease to exist. More workers would evacuate. More infrastructure would be erased. Hale understood strategy, understood warfare at the industrial level. The humans weren't just fighting battles. They were dismantling the Dominion's ability to wage war, targeting the supply chain, the production facilities, the foundation of military power. They were going to win, not through superior tactics or better soldiers, through the simple fact that the Dominion couldn't build ships fast enough to replace the ones humanity destroyed. Around her, workers wept, for their jobs, for their worlds, for a future that suddenly looked very different from anything they'd imagined. Hale didn't weep. She just watched the empty space where the shipyards had been and wondered what came next. Reed floated in zero gravity outside the reckoning, suited and tethered, staring at the hull of the ship that had changed everything. The Confederation Council had sent him here as an observer, as a liaison, as someone who'd witnessed the human vessel's first engagement and survived to talk about it. But standing here, seeing the ship this close, Reed felt like an insect studying a mountain. "Officer Reed, please proceed to Airlock 7, a calm voice said through his helmet comm. "Female, human. Captain Davies is ready to meet with you." Reed activated his maneuvering pack and moved toward the designated airlock. The Reckoning's hull was like nothing he'd seen before. No seams, no welds, no visible construction joints. It was as if the entire 4-kilometer vessel had been grown rather than built. Patterns flowed across the surface, geometric designs that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The airlock cycled him through. Gravity returned gradually, letting his body adjust. The inner door opened to reveal a human woman in a simple uniform. No rank insignia, no decorations, just clean gray fabric and a professional smile. "Welcome aboard, Officer Reed. I'm Commander Foster. I'll escort you to the captain." Reed followed her through corridors that were too quiet. He'd served on dozens of ships and they all had sounds, engines humming, life support cycling, equipment operating. The Reckoning was silent except for their footsteps. "How many crew do you have aboard?" Reed asked. 147, Foster answered. "Small crew for a ship this size, I know, but we don't need many. The ship handles most operations autonomously." 147 people operating a vessel that had destroyed thousands of enemy ships. Reed tried to process that number and couldn't make it make sense. They reached a conference room. Inside, a man stood looking at a star chart projected in the air. He was tall, maybe 50 standard years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. When he turned, Reed recognized the face from transmitted images. Captain Davies. "Officer Reed, thank you for coming." Davies gestured to a seat. "Can I offer you anything, water, food?" "Just answers," Reed said, sitting. "The Confederation Council wants to know what humanity's plan is, what you're doing, what you want." Davies smiled grimly. "We want to end this war, quickly, decisively, with minimum civilian casualties. You're destroying entire fleets, erasing shipyards. The Dominion is calling it genocide." The Dominion would know about genocide, considering their actions on conquered worlds. Davies pulled up new images on the display. Reed recognized some of them: occupation camps, mass graves, burned cities. "We've been watching this war for 3 years, Reed, watching the Dominion expand, watching them kill anyone who resists. Do you know what we found on the occupied worlds?" Reed shook his head. "Extermination camps, systematic elimination of populations deemed problematic, entire species being erased, not conquered, not subjugated, erased. When we discovered this, humanity made a decision. We couldn't allow it to continue. So you brought out your secret weapons, this ship. How many more like it do you have?" 7. Davies let that number hang in the air. 7 vessels of the Reckoning class. We've been building them for 20 years, hoping we'd never need to use them. But the Dominion crossed a line we couldn't ignore. Reed thought about the firepower he'd witnessed, thought about 7 ships with that capability. You could destroy the entire Dominion in weeks, maybe days. "We could," Davies agreed. "But that's not our goal. We're targeting military capability, shipyards, fleets, command structures. We're not bombing civilian populations. We're not burning worlds. We're removing the Dominion's ability to wage war, nothing more. The Dominion won't surrender. Their culture doesn't allow it. Then we'll keep dismantling their military until they have no choice." Davies changed the display, showing Dominion territory. Red markers indicated destroyed facilities. Yellow markers showed targets in progress. "We're 3 weeks into our campaign. We've eliminated 60% of their offensive capacity. Another 2 weeks and they'll be unable to maintain their occupation forces. Another month and they'll be defenseless. And then what? You occupy them. No, Davies looked Reed directly in the eyes. We don't want territory, don't want dominion over anyone. We just want the killing to stop. When the Dominion can't fight anymore, we'll help the Confederation establish peace terms. Fair terms. No revenge. No retribution, just peace. Reed struggled with the concept. Why? You have the power to take whatever you want, to rule the galaxy if you wanted. Why not use it? Davies was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled up another image. A planet beautiful and blue but marked with massive scars. Continents showed signs of terrible devastation. Cities reduced to ash. Forests burned to nothing. That's Earth, Davies said. 400 years ago, we nearly killed ourselves. Nuclear war, biological weapons, chemical agents. We came within a hair's breadth of extinction. 7 billion people reduced to less than a billion. The survivors had to rebuild from ashes. I didn't know. Not many do. We don't talk about it much. But that experience taught us something fundamental about power. Having the ability to destroy doesn't mean you should. Having the strength to dominate doesn't mean you must. We learned the hard way that the strongest choice is sometimes restraint. Davies deactivated the display. That's why we built ships like the Reckoning, not for conquest, for ending conflicts before they become extinction events, for protecting those who can't protect themselves, for making war so devastating that surrender becomes preferable to continued fighting. You're trying to save the Dominion from themselves. We're trying to save everyone. The Dominion, the Confederation, the hundreds of species caught in between. War is easy. Destruction is simple. Building something better afterward, that's the hard part. But it's the part that matters. Reed thought about the battles he'd fought, the friends he'd lost, the hopelessness that had become normal. The Confederation has been losing this war for 3 years. Why did humanity wait so long to intervene? We needed to be certain intervention was necessary, needed to exhaust diplomatic options, needed to document Dominion war crimes thoroughly. We don't take military action lightly. But once we discovered the extermination camps, the systematic genocide, we couldn't stand aside anymore. Some things demand response. What happens next? Davies pulled up a final image. The Dominion homeworld surrounded by defensive installations. We're heading there, not to destroy it, to stand in orbit and make the Dominion leadership face reality. Their fleet is broken. Their shipyards are gone. Their ability to wage war is ending. They can surrender and face justice, or they can fight and watch their military be dismantled completely. Either way, the occupation ends. Reed looked at the tactical display. You think they'll surrender? I think they'll realize they don't have a choice. And if they don't, we'll keep removing pieces from the board until they do, however long it takes. Davies stood. The war is ending, Reed. Whether it ends quickly through surrender or slowly through attrition is the Dominion's choice, but it's ending. Reed stood as well. He thought about returning to the Confederation fleet, thought about explaining this to the Council, thought about the future humanity was trying to force into existence. Can I ask you something personal, Captain? Of course. Do you sleep well at night, knowing what this ship can do, knowing what you've done with it? Davies was silent for a long moment. No, not really, but I sleep better than I would if I'd done nothing and let the genocide continue. Power comes with responsibility. We're trying to use ours wisely. Reed nodded slowly. He understood now. Understood what humanity was doing and why. Understood the terrible mathematics of trying to save lives by ending them. Understood that sometimes the only way to stop a monster was to become something even more frightening. Admiral Corvus stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the defense grid around the Dominion homeworld come alive. Every available ship had been pulled back to this final defensive line. Every weapon platform activated. Every soldier prepared for the last stand. 2,000 warships, 3 orbital defense stations, hundreds of ground-based weapons batteries. It was the most concentrated military force the Dominion had ever assembled. Against 7 human vessels. They'd arrived an hour ago, those 7 ships of the Reckoning class. They hung in space beyond the defense perimeter, silent and dark like tombstones, waiting. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet," his communications officer reported. "It's being broadcast to every channel, including civilian frequencies. They're making sure everyone can hear it." "Put it through." Captain Davies' voice filled the bridge. Corvus had heard that voice many times over the past weeks, always offering surrender, always being refused. He expected the same now. He was wrong. "People of the Dominion worlds, my name is Captain Davies of the United Human Space Force. I am speaking to you directly, bypassing your government, because you deserve to know the truth about this war." On the main view screen, images began to appear. Occupation camps, Dominion soldiers executing civilians, facilities designed for mass extermination, worlds burned by Dominion weapons. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. "Your government has committed systematic genocide across 20 conquered worlds. They have eliminated entire populations, erased species from existence. These are not propaganda images. These are documented facts. Your leaders have not been fighting a war of expansion. They have been conducting organized mass murder." Corvus watched his bridge crew react, saw shock on their faces, saw horror, saw the moment they realized they'd been lied to. "We didn't want this war," Davies continued. "We tried diplomacy, tried negotiations, tried every peaceful option. But when we discovered the extermination camps, we had no choice but to intervene. We have spent the last month systematically dismantling your military capability. Your fleets are destroyed. Your shipyards are gone. You can no longer wage war." More images. Dominion ships being destroyed. Shipyard moons erased. The systematic elimination of military assets. The humans had documented everything. "Your leaders have one choice now. Surrender. Face justice for their crimes. Allow peace to return to this region of space. If they refuse, we will remain in orbit until they change their minds. We will not bombard your homeworld, will not harm your civilians, but neither will we leave until the genocide ends." The transmission cut to a new speaker, a Confederation diplomat, then representatives from a dozen species the Dominion had occupied, all telling the same story, all demanding justice, all supported by human military power. "Sir, incoming transmission from the planetary government," the communications officer said. "They want to speak with you." Corvus expected orders to attack, expected demands for a final, glorious battle. What he got was silence. Then, quietly, "Stand down, Admiral. We're negotiating surrender terms." Surrender? Corvus couldn't believe it. "We still have 2,000 ships. We can fight." "Against those," the politician's voice was bitter. "They've shown us what happens when we fight. Every fleet destroyed, every defense broken. We can't win this, Corvus. Can't even slow them down. The only thing fighting achieves is more death." "The Dominion does not surrender." "The Dominion just did. Stand down, that's an order." The connection cut. Corvus stood in silence, staring at his tactical display, at the 2,000 ships ready to fight, at the 7 human vessels that had broken an empire. "Admiral," his tactical officer asked, "what are your orders?" Corvus thought about his career, about the conquests, about the victories he'd claimed without questioning the cost. He thought about the images Davies had broadcast, about the camps, about the genocide conducted in his civilization's name. "Stand down," he said quietly. "All ships, power down weapons, open communications with the human fleet. Tell them we're complying with surrender terms." The orders spread through the defensive network. One by one, Dominion ships deactivated their weapons. Corvus watched it happen, watched his military stand down without firing a shot. The biggest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, surrendering to a force they outnumbered nearly 300 to 1. But numbers didn't matter, not against an enemy with such overwhelming technological superiority, not against humanity's strange combination of devastating power and careful restraint. Incoming shuttle from the human fleet, sensors reported. They're requesting permission to dock. They want to discuss terms. Grant permission. Corvus met them in the docking bay. Captain Davies, Commander Foster, two other humans in simple uniforms. No weapons, no guards, just 4 people coming aboard a ship with 2,000 crew members who'd been preparing to kill them an hour ago. Davies extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. Corvus stared at it for a moment, then accepted it. "Thank you for seeing reason," Davies said, "for choosing peace. We didn't have much choice." "You always have choices. You chose surrender over continued fighting. That takes courage." Corvus laughed bitterly. "It takes defeat. It takes wisdom." Davies pulled out a data pad. "These are the terms: full disarmament, war crimes tribunals for leadership, reparations to occupied worlds, Confederation oversight of your government for 20 years. After that, full sovereignty restored. You're not occupying us, not taking our worlds. We don't want your worlds, we want peace. Want to make sure this never happens again." Davies looked directly at Corvus. "Your people aren't evil. Your leadership made terrible choices. We're separating those two things. The individuals responsible will face justice. The Dominion civilization will have a chance to rebuild." Corvus read the terms carefully. They were harsh but fair, focused on justice rather than revenge, designed to prevent future aggression without destroying the Dominion completely. "What happens to the military?" he asked. "To soldiers like me?" "Depends on what you did. If you were part of the genocide, you'll face trial. If you were just following orders and didn't commit atrocities, you'll be allowed to return home. We're not interested in punishing people for being born Dominion, just in stopping the killing. And if we violate these terms, if we rebuild our fleet." Davies gestured toward the viewport. The 7 human ships hung in space, dark and deadly and patient. "Then we come back, and next time we won't be so gentle." Corvus understood. The humans had shown mercy, had given the Dominion a chance at redemption. But that mercy came with teeth, with the implicit threat that forgiveness was a one-time offer. "I'll recommend acceptance," Corvus said. "The war is over." "Yes, it is." 6 months later, Reed stood on Petra's world, watching reconstruction efforts. Human ships had brought supplies, materials, expertise. Other Confederation species contributed workers, technology, goodwill. The occupied worlds were being rebuilt, better than they'd been before the war. The Dominion government had collapsed, replaced by a council system overseen by Confederation observers. War crimes trials were ongoing. Some Dominion leaders had been sentenced. Others awaited judgment. The process was slow, careful, focused on justice rather than revenge. The Reckoning and its sister ships had departed, returning to human space. They'd done their job, ended the war, forced peace into existence through overwhelming power used with surgical precision. Reed thought about his conversation with Davies, about responsibility and restraint, about using power wisely. A group of children ran past, playing in streets that had been battlegrounds. Human kids and Confederation kids, and even some young Dominion whose families had opposed the war. All playing together, unaware of the history that had brought them here. Petra joined him, carrying supplies for the school they were rebuilding. "You helped save us. Your testimony about the human ships helped convince the council to accept their intervention." "I just told the truth. The humans did the saving. By destroying thousands of ships, by burning worlds. By ending a genocide, by giving us all a chance at something better." Reed looked at the playing children. They made hard choices, did terrible things, but they did them for the right reasons. Do you think it's really over, the war? Reed thought about those 7 ships, about humanity's promise to return if tyranny rose again, about the galaxy forever changed by their intervention. Yes, this war is over, and maybe, if we learn the right lessons, there won't be another one, at least not like this. Above them, the sky was clear and blue. No ships burned in orbit, no weapons fired, just peace bought with fire and maintained by the promise of overwhelming force should anyone threaten it again. The galaxy had learned what humanity was capable of, had seen their power, had witnessed their willingness to use it when necessary. But more importantly, the galaxy had seen their restraint, their mercy, their commitment to building something better after the burning was done. That, Reed thought, was the real message of the reckoning, not just that humanity could destroy, but that they chose, whenever possible, not to.